Good afternoon. For oral communication paper 4, if you have 10 minutes to plan, what would you do? That's the question. Do you spend it all on the plan response section and totally ignore the spoken direction? Or do you do otherwise? What is the wise decision? And even so, how do you actually plan for spoken interaction if you decide that that should be a wiser choice? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Mr. Go, and today we are gonna explore what to do during the 10 minutes preparation for your O-level paper 4 for oral communication. Are you ready? So let's go! For paper 4 oral communication, what we need to do is that this is 30 marks question for both plan response and your spoken interaction. Each one will consist of 15 marks each, so we should technically be dividing our time equally, right? So the approximate duration of paper 4 is about 20 minutes per candidate, including 10 minutes of preparation time. And this paper comprises of 2 parts which may be thematically linked. So when you look at a question for your plan response, it may actually be linked thematically to your spoken interaction, but they already mentioned that it may be but might not be, but most of the time it will highly likely to be. So let's take a look at what I suggest for you. And in terms of the 10 minutes breakdown, what I do suggest is that you spend 5 minutes planning for your plan response, you rehearse for 2 minutes, after that you refine what you have written so that we have one solid presentation that you can actually present to your oral examiner. So for the last 2 minutes we can actually plan for your spoken interaction. But when I say 5 minutes plan for planned response, what I actually meant is 4 minutes. So the other 1 minute is usually used for you to watch your video stimulus, and that is actually included in your 10 minutes, which means you're left with 4 minutes. And if you're not sure what to do during the 4 minutes, please watch this video, how to plan for a planned response. The advice is do not write in full sentence, because writing in full sentence, even though it helps you to be able to articulate in complete sequential order, but it takes up too much time given that you have only 4 minutes. So my advice, write in point form rather than in full sentences. Having said that, we will be moving to the next part where we talk about 2 minutes of rehearsal and 1 minute of refinement. When we refine, what we need to do is to make sure that your flow is there in terms of logic and coherence. And the tip is do not rehearse and refine simultaneously. What you want to do is to rehearse the full 2 minutes so that you will end exactly around 2 minutes. Hopefully slightly before that, obviously. So anything that is beyond 2 minutes will definitely not be counted, even though you're allowed to finish your last line. At this moment, your job is to ensure that you do not refine at the same time so that the refinement comes later. After you have finished your 2 minutes, you know that roughly where in the ballpark will your response be in terms of your time limit. Then you can refine accordingly. You might want to shorten it or perhaps lengthen it depending on how long you have spoken. When you refine, please check for coherence. Coherence actually talk about logical and consistent flow. So from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, and that will be a coherent response. And next, you also check for how they are connected as whole. So you might want to use connectors such as firstly, secondly, thirdly, and this will allow you to connect your ideas in perhaps cohesively so that you'll gel to one very coherent response. So we're looking for 2 major words: coherent and cohesive. These are the 2 keywords you should look out for. And last but not least, we have moved to the last part where we spend 2 minutes planning for your spoken interaction. Most students will ignore this part. They will instead spend the last 2 minutes perhaps thinking of new ideas or refining their planned response, and they'll totally ignore this segment. And I would strongly encourage you to actually plan for your spoken interaction, because after all, they have equal weightage. And why are you ignoring one in favor of the other? Right. For spoken interaction, what you need to know is that you have approximately 2 minutes to plan, and you're actually not bound by time for this segment when you speak, but preferably not too long because you'll lose the engagement. And what would you plan for spoken interaction? This was not covered previously, and this is what we'll be exploring now. Before we do that, I would really appreciate it if you can give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and press the notification button. Thank you so much. And for this part, if we notice the second aspect, which is a thematically linked aspect, we're talking about the planned response being thematically linked to the spoken interaction, which I have spoken earlier. And if you notice that this part is actually mentioned, it means that there is a high chance that you can actually plan beforehand and perhaps come out with some form of ready materials that you can use. Obviously, I'm not asking you to read from it, but you can definitely pick at it from time to time. So step 1 is to predict the questions. So for the planned response questions, for example, example, does making a living as a street artist or a street performer appeal to you? Why or why not? You're supposed to predict the spoken interaction questions based on this given question for your planned response. And how do you actually predict? You look at these two key concepts. Question 2 is usually a general question which targets friends and family, and somebody that is usually in your close proximity in terms of your social circles. And the other one, you're talking about argumentative kind of questions, like do you agree or do you disagree, why or why not? For the second type of questions where we talk about friends and family, a question would look like, would your parents or other adults share your view about making a living as a street artist or street performer? Why or why not? This will be a sample question that could possibly come out if the planned response question is about making a living as a street artist or a street performer. They are talking about your responses from your parents, adults, perhaps your friends, or even your classmates. Last but not least, we talk about argumentative kind of questions. A sample question will look like, would you say that the people in your country are interested in activities related to the arts? Because performing as a street artist is related to the theme of arts. So such as visiting a museum or watching a play. Why do you say so? They will usually question you, the reason behind your stand, and would like you to elaborate on it. In this case, using the words the people in your country, the ethnic circle that is surrounding them, we're talking about a community, and the circle after that is targeting the nation or perhaps the government, which is usually targeting the nation aspects. One way to look at this is circles of influence, where we talk about general all the way to specific or vice versa. So something specific is individual, we move on to friends and families, school, community, nation, government, region, last but not least, global. So all these are ways to facilitate your prediction and your planning process. So this concept of circles of influence is actually quite important, so please make sure that you learn this. Step 2 is to plan your vocabulary. What we want is a variety of them, and for example, when we talk about the word boring, I mean, this is such a simple word and probably even primary school kids will be using them. In your case, as a secondary school student or perhaps as a more advanced learner, what would you use? Well, let me show you 5 more. You have tedious, monotonous, repetitive, dull, unimaginative, and in the end, you create such a vivid picture in the mind of your examiner that they have no doubt but to give you a very high score for your vocabulary because you have showcased a variety. The key here is not to repeat your word, and even if you think of the word boring but perhaps you like to use it again, choose another word. That's my advice to you. The key is variety. Another way you can work on this area now that you know that the theme is on arts is to look at what other quotes can you remember from your days that you encounter the newspaper, the books, or even news articles. Be a yardstick of quality. Some people aren't used to an environment where excellence is expected. So who said this? Do you have any idea? If you don't, well, let me give you a clue. It starts with S, ends with the letter S as well. 2 words. 3, 2, 1, and the answer is Steve Jobs. He's actually the co-founder of Apple, and unfortunately he has passed on, but he was very famous as a visionary. This idea of being a yardstick of quality can actually be used in a theme of arts where we talk about being outstanding. So you want to create an environment where art can be used to create excellent pieces of work. The key is to use it in an apt manner. Last but not least, we move on to the last step, which is to plan your examples. Just now we have spoke about circles of influence. When you plan your examples, you can actually use this framework, starting for individual, your own example, that will be your personal experience, then friends and family, then we talk about school, community, nation, government, region, and last but not least, talk about global. So usually the higher up the example or the more general it is, moving up to global, the less likely you're able to use your personal experience. You're going to move out to other kind of information such as statistics or perhaps case study. Let's take a look at the themes. These are the available themes that you can actually think about from different aspects. For examples, you can talk about arts and aesthetics, community, environments and conservation, family and elderly. Next, we have hobbies and career. You have sports and health, technology, urban life, or life in the urban environment, such as hydroponics or aeroponics or urban farming. These are the different themes that you can actually think of your examples. If you are able to think from the different aspects of themes, when you are planning, this will give you ample examples should they have a question related to the different themes. When we talk about different types of examples, we can talk about personal experience, statistics, which is moving up to a more impersonal level, and we're talking about a case study, we're talking about a certain event or certain incident that happened. Let's recap. 5212. Remember the magical number? What I'm saying is that you can use it to plan your response. For your planned response for 5 minutes, including the watching time, you rehearse for 2 minutes, you can refine for 1 minute, and last last but not least, you can plan for a spoken interaction for about 2 minutes. Please feel free to adjust, but this is just a guideline and it is not a hard and fast rule. Whichever that helps you prepare adequately for both sections would most definitely be ideal. So as you adjust and rehearse and practice for your oral communication O-level paper 4, I believe that you'll be able to find a certain ideal configuration in terms of planning. After all, everyone has 10 minutes. So one more thing, what do you need to prepare? If you're talking about time, you need a digital watch, and you can simply find one from Shopee or Lazada. One that I find is perhaps this Casio digital watch F91W. I'm not promoting this, but it's about 1950 as of July 14. Given that you can probably own one, it would be ideal for you to do a countdown timer and perhaps use that to count down the time that you have left for 10 minutes, because you really do not know the time when you are actually writing furiously for a planned response. Smartwatch is banned, so if any of you have a smartwatch, please do not bring it into the examination room. You will face the penalty of cheating in exams, so please don't do that. Last but not least, when you have the watch, please wear it and time yourself. So when you time yourself, you know you can practice the 5-2-1-2 method. And we have come to the end, so hopefully this video will help you be able to figure or configure a way that allows you to best use your time for planning. That's all for today, and have an awesome day. Bye bye.